Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Fadina Najam from Division of Arts and Social Sciences, University of Education, Lahore. The course title is Advanced Landscape Painting. Dear students, our topic is about composition, space, movement, balance, symmetry, rhythm, shapes, proportion, and lighting. First of all, what is composition? Composition refers to the organization, arrange, and combination of objects within the boards of a drawing space. Actually, the term composition means putting together or the act of combining parts or elements to form a whole. And through these explanations, much can be concluded what composition in art stands for. It can be simply defined as arrangement of visual elements according to the principles that were established in visual practices over the centuries. Although some of the principles changed with time, the careful and thought out placement of elements plays an integral role in every successful composition, being that of visual arts, music, or writing. Space. Space is one of the 7 elements of art. When we think of space, we often consider it in terms of depth or the illusion of depth in a drawing or painting. However, when it comes to composition, we can think of space in terms of the actual pictorial space on the drawing or painting surface. In this painting, you can see the positive and negative space. White area is positive and black is negative space. The space that is taken up by important subjects or design elements is considered positive space. The areas that surround these locations are considered negative space. Often it is the negative space that provides an area of rest for the viewer. Take a look at the images. We first see the original image on the left. In the middle image, the negative space is highlighted with red. In the third, we see the positive space highlighted with red. Positive and negative space work together to create the composition. A composition can be made up of mostly positive space and even balance of the two or mostly negative space. Here an example of a composition made of equal parts of positive and negative space, and here's one made of mostly negative space. Mostly positive space. Here. Balance negative and positive space. Mostly negative space. You can see. Each one of these composition is derived from the same subject and each could be considered successful. Successful use of positive and negative space within our composition is dependent on balance. How this balance is achieved will depend on the subject, the use of the medium, the level of detail included, contrast, and other visual factors. The best way to craft a balance in a work and ensure that the positive and negative space works for the good of the composition is through careful planning. Movement. Movement can refer to the illusion of actual movement in a drawing or painting, or it can refer to the movement that a viewer's eye takes when experiencing your art. When a viewer interacts with your art, their eyes move from one element to the next. Usually, the most commanding element demands immediate attention. After that, the viewer may move on to other spotting elements within the scene. An artist, we can control this eye movement based on how we plan our composition. We can guide the viewer to the most important elements and many times control how most people will ingest our creation. In most cases, we want the viewer eye to flow through the work in a certain order. Depending on the subject, the order may look something like this. The viewer is drawn into the work, is guided to the focal point, guided to the spotting elements, guided out of the work or back to the focal point. This visual movement is usually achieved by creating contrast, guiding lines, diagonals, and overlapping elements. Perhaps your eye followed a similar route as mine. I entered the work at the bottom of the valley. Near the stream, I was guided by the line of darkness. Darker trees to the center of the pictorial space, then back into the forest. I then followed the line of the trees just in front of the distant mountains. From there, I was guided back to the center. This positioning of these elements allowed me to see all the important parts within the work while appreciating each section of the painting on its own. We can use the same techniques to have a bit of control on how a viewer interacts with our art. Although we cannot fully control how people will view our art, we can have some influence over their visual experience. You can see the movement. The City Rises is considered by many to be the very first truly futurist painting. Boscioni took a year to complete it, and it was exhibited throughout Europe shortly after it was finished. It testifies to the hold that New Impressionism and Symbolism mentioned on the movement artist. Symbolism maintained on the movement's artist even after Futurism was inaugurated in 1909. It was not until around 1911 that Boscioni adopted elements of Cubism to create a distinct futurist style. Nevertheless, The City Rises does capture the group love of dynamism and their fondness for the modern city. A large horse races into the foreground while several workers struggle to gain control of it, suggesting a primal conflict between humanity and beast. The horse and figures are blurred, communicating rapid movement while other elements such as the buildings in the background are rendered more realistically. Another example, landscape painting. Another one, beautiful. Balance. Balance is a stable arrangement of subject within a composition. It provides a sense of dynamism depending on whether Symmetrical is asymmetrical or radial balance is applied. Symmetrical balance. Symmetrical composition convey a sense of stability. In this example, a single large figure in the center is flanked by a smaller figure on either side. The shape of the artwork itself is also symmetrical. A vertical line bisecting the image would create two equal halves that are mirror images of one another. Compositional symmetry of classical beauty and Duchamp wheel. Starting with nature, symmetrical patterns seem to be influencing artists throughout history and have been an important factor in shaping of our environments and societies. Beauty and symmetrical compositions seem to be traditionally linked, although never fully explained. Ideal, ideal divine world was in the Middle Ages was conceived as symmetrical with portal composition of many churches sculptured in this manner. Philosophers and modern artists tried to give their explanation of beauty found in symmetry, and they usually link it with happiness. To see that wheel turning was very soothing, very comforting, a sort of opening of avenues onto other things than the material life of the everyday. The beauty of the composition can be defined through the happiness he felt in observing it. Asymmetrical composition often convey a sense of movement since the elements of the composition are unbalanced. In this example, the artist used organic forms to create a composition that mimics the movement of vines growing in an unordered fashion around the clock face. Symmetry, balance. Just as a room would seem out of the balance if all of the furniture were piled up on one side, a drawing must be balanced to the asymmetrically placing. Regardless of their actual physical weight, large objects in a drawing seem heavier than small ones. By objectively viewing the elements in a drawing, you can learn to see their perceptual weight. Rhythm. We understand rhythm through repetition. For example, we can hear the beat of a song and its rhythm because it repeats many times in predictable way. Without repetition, there is no rhythm. In art, the same is true. We must have repetition in order have rhythm. Usually, rhythm is created by repeating elements. This could be a regular or irregular pattern of repeating shapes, or it could be a repetition of a specific subject. Either way, repeating elements produce a rhythm. Take a look at the painting. Notice how it has a sense of rhythm. Van Gogh painting. The rhythm is created through repetition. We can see here how the shapes created for the blades of the flowers are repeated. And also the shapes for the smaller flowers in the upper left corner. The shapes created for the irises are no different. They also repeat. Your work can often lead to a sense of harmony and unity. Let's go back to the music analogy. Most popular songs feature a consistent rhythm throughout the song. The dynamic of the song may change, but the time signature rarely does. And even though the notes may change, uh, the consistent rhythm unifies the song from start to finish. So, our artwork should have this consistency, which leads up to the next principles harmony and unity. Trying modern dance. A drawing great rhythm where we can to see the forms of the human figures. Source we can say that rhythm is as a flow of movement generated by the repetition of elements with the same features. In other words, a continuous repetition of lines generates a linear rhythm which direct the sight in one direction. A repetition of forms generate a formal rhythm where the forms into the space mark this movement. In this painting, the human figure in movement is a topic with many beauty. It can be a dance or the way of waking of a person or a sport exercise or many other activities that the human body can do. In the repetition, the figures give the idea of movement, but we will need to paint or draw some repetitions to be able to generate the movement. A work of the painter Krishna gives us another example of rhythm. Six dances. The rhythm and the abstract art. In the abstract painting, there is very much games of rhythm with repetitions of form, light, colors, etc. as you can see in this painting. One of the Kandinsky goals in his creation of abstract artwork was precisely to be able to represent the rhythm and the music with the painting art. He found in the abstract form the best way of expressing them because the rhythm can be marked much easier if the form is more synthetic. How to give life to your artwork, adding rhythm on the composition. Our decisions to place the forms, lights, and color, they must be thought with the concept of rhythm. In a work, there can be more or less piece. From a wide pace for being a very flat work up to a very frantic pace based on the thousands of forms and repetitions. The rhythm must not be understood only in a global way of the whole topic but also as the small elements inside the image that they will be repeated. For example, the small brushstrokes to represent the leaves of a tree or as the following work. In the example, David Hockney was a great painter of the rhythm, with a lot of work of repetitions, both like simple brushstrokes and like more complex forms. Proportion. Finally, proportion affects how things relate to one another regarding size, distance, and scale. Composition in art. A painting technique and perspective may all be excellent, yet the painting will fail unless its composition succeed. Composition in the harmonious arranging of the component parts of a work of art into a unified whole. Henry examines the work of old master and modern in this book and uses these examples to explain the principle of composition in art. All the paintings that the author analyzes are illustrated in the text, 166 illustrations, including 9 in full color, 32 diagrams by the author accompany his textual discussion of such topics as the importance of balance, entrance and circular observation, angular composition with one or more units, and light and shade.